Catastrophic disclosure. That is what we are dealing with. And I want to talk a little bit about this topic because for many years in the aliens and UFO topics, we've had this kind of theme going that there is the potential for a catastrophic disclosure, which is the sudden revelation of direct evidence indicating the presence of non-human intelligences operating on this planet. Now, that's fairly expansive in the way that it could come about and what that covers. Obviously, non-human intelligence is kind of encompassing enough to include, physical extraterrestrials, non-physical extraterrestrials, beings that maybe reside outside the visible spectrum, which some people refer to as kind of interdimensional, but that are not visible to us normally, or even cryptoterrestrials, some kinds of prehistoric intelligence that remains hidden beneath the ground or under our oceans, and all sorts of other potentials. Really encompasses everything. So a catastrophic disclosure would be the sudden direct evidence that such forces are real and operating here, given in a way that potentially destabilizes society, or at the very minimum causes a pause, a kind of stop and think about where we are, how we got here, what's happening, where we're going, how we tackle the issue that has been suddenly thrust into public consciousness. Now, I would make the case that that is exactly what is happening right now with the Epstein files revelations, is that this is functioning almost identically to the alien catastrophic disclosure model. So what we have here is the sudden thrusting into public consciousness of evidence indicating the presence of an alien type of society and an alien type of mind operating at the highest levels of human civilization. Now, this is forcing people to stop and question how we got here, how things became like that, how long this has been going on. What does it say about the public? We the public that have enabled this. What do we do with this potential threat and this alien mind that is operating amongst us? Now, I always had the view that my work, which deals with evidence for prehistoric alien visitation, I always had the view that I wanted it out as a catastrophic disclosure to go out fully to the public, that they'd be able to see the evidence that we'd had a non-human intelligence here for almost 800,000 years, and that it would act as a stop and redirect for society. And that was my model, my aim, that it would function as a stop and redirect. We live in a crazy time. We're heading towards all sorts of black swan events, the potential, post-human world, a technocratic dictatorship. All these things were on the table. And I generally thought that, if the evidence could get out there and cause a large enough, impact into the public consciousness, it would have made us stop and have a debate as to how we got here, what are the forces impacting us, and which direction do we take. Well, that is happening. It hasn't happened in the way that obviously I would have preferred, and the way I planned in terms of my interest in what we could call positive social engineering. But it is happening, and I am seeing the potential for people to use this moment, as horrible and awful as this catastrophic disclosure has turned out to be, that people will use this as a moment to question our fundamentals of civilization, the foundations of the current modern global world, and will ask, how do we do better? How do we remodel? How do we rethink governance? How do we rethink, the way that societies interact and the stratified layers of society with, kind of what I call a predatory parasitic world controller kind of class that sits above direct society, controls offshore banking, inflicts interest on us, inflicts inflation, inflicts malicious taxation that's enforced through the threat of harm. All of these systems that we're born into and kind of take for granted as being just fundamental. There is the opportunity to then, of course, question these in light of what's happening. So while I think that we still may as yet enter into a broader dialogue about real aliens, and fully non-human intelligence that's not embodied by like this governance kind of class, that may also happen. But I think that really the impacts of a catastrophic disclosure have happened. So whatever comes next, even if the conversation does move on to, is there an alien element to what's happening? I know that's already happening. People asking, are some of these people, working with non-human intelligences? Is that why they behave in this way? You know, is there an element that is what some would call, malicious aliens or demonic beings, or is there something to this like that? And I would say that that is a genuine question that has to be asked, and a topic that does need to be deeply explored. That this may well lead into a broader conversation around that alien topic too, which could mean that we are in now a rolling series of catastrophic disclosures as a number of difficult topics are brought to the fore and the evidence is explored in a kind of a global setting by a now more open-minded public. Now, from there, we also need a conversation about psychic phenomena and psychic abilities, something that comes up in the Epstein documents quite a lot. There's clearly within those networks a acceptance of psychic phenomena, which I know to be real. Many people know to be real because they've had, thousands of experiences of it, myself and many people in my own network have had thousands of experiences of psychic phenomena and work with psychic phenomena. That is something that's been suppressed by the same power, base which has hidden their behavior behind, a wall of secrecy, which we are now seeing through the Epstein files. That these people accept that, but they don't want you to accept it. In the same way that many of them seem to be, convinced of all sorts of things like lost civilizations and aliens and all stuff, but they don't want the general public to accept that. So this is going to, I think, lead to a number of very profound conversations. And I'm here for it. And I will be certainly doing my bit to encourage people to question the status quo and to deeply explore the various topics that are, linked to this. But first and foremost, of course, we need mass awareness. So anyone who is seeing what's happening with the Epstein Files topic, talk about it. Talk to your friends, your family, your colleagues, the people in your church, the people at the gym. With enough people talking about this, it will not go away. And there is a point where the majority of society will be saying, we don't want to be governed by, a predatory, parasitic world controller class, and we need something new. And it also means a majority of people will remain in that conversation as other topics come up. Some of them certainly more positive, with the potential to lead us out of this mess and into a very different landscape, a much more positive landscape ahead. But it always gets darkest just before the dawn, and that's, to my mind, is exactly where we're at. So I look forward to continuing the conversation with you, and I hope you find that perspective helpful and interesting. So talk again very soon.